February at the movies saw the Captain America franchise make its long-awaited return with a new lead in Anthony Mackie in a sequel that saw the crowd go mild. Yeah, it was a fairly tepid response to the latest of Marvel offerings, which will be one of the movies we're going to discuss this month on February at the movies. Myself, Ger Leggett, and the one and only Tom Pot of the Pop Cult Pod joining us as always. But Tom, as we get kicked off here to discuss what was February, what is the worst recasting flop that you can recall in cinema history?
Honestly, it was actually almost harder than expected because I was like, man, there was a lot of kind of dodgy recasting. So I had to really kind of think about this. And I think what makes like a bad recasting isn't just when it's like doesn't click like it used to, but I also think like the longer a role kind of goes vacated, the more it stings when it's recast because the person that originally like originated the role kind of becomes so iconic you can't touch that. So like say something like James Bond, we're kind of used to getting a new James Bond at this point. So I was like, there's definitely James Bonds I like more and less. But then I thought of like Terminator. I saw T2 recently in cinemas, and I was like, man, Linda Hamilton is amazing in that. She's so goddamn good. And we hadn't had her return to the franchise until like 2019 or whatever.
Mm.
And then I was like, Michael Biehn is so good as Kyle Reese. And then I was like, oh, so I actually have a twofer. um,
Okay.
in 2015, we got Terminator Genesis, and they were like, we've got to get a new Kyle Reese. We've got to get a new Sarah Connor. And they got really pretty people. now, now that is not an insult to Linda Hamilton or Michael Biehn. They're kind of rugged in that kind of way, and that suits the movie. But like they got Jai Courtney as
Mm.
Kyle Reese, who just looks like an underwear model. Like no offense to the guy, but the only time I've ever seen him be believable is when he, an Australian, played an Australian. Um, so that doesn't work. And then we have Amelia Clark, who again, yeah, she was great as Daenerys, but the whole point of Daenerys was she was kind of meant to be like this soft, kind of young, kind of child look, and that's not Sarah Connor.
Yeah.
So it was just watching like two kids kind of pretend, and it was really awkward, and it was a bad movie anyway. But two of them, I was just like, man, you missed the ball. As soon as I saw those, it was like, no, we fucked up the casting here. It's over. Forget it.
I hate that when you go into a movie and the casting is just awful and you're just like, oh, well, I'm going to hate the next 2 hours of my life.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's it. You're just straight away. You're like, no, it doesn't work. Um, You've actually reminded me of one, and it isn't a recast, but it's a recast in the way that Anthony Mackie is a recast for Captain America because
Okay.
it's moving on, but the same type of character. And this just popped into mind. It was when possible best actor winner this Sunday, Adrian Brody, decided he was going to be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger and starred in Predator. Do you remember he was
Oh my
like jacked,
God,
ripped
yeah.
action star, and this is Adrian Brody, and it's like his entire career since then has shown that's not what he wants to be
Yeah.
or do. It was insane. That just popped into mind. James Bond also came to mind for me in um and it's not a recast. It is the lack of a recast actually now, and the fact that they haven't recast Daniel Craig in so long, despite him
hmm
saying, "I don't want to do this anymore." Like literally name anyone else for like a decade now, to the point that they've just the creators and the rights holders of James Bond have now lost the rights, and essentially Amazon are coming in and going, "We're going to make the James Bond universe," and you're like, "Well, that's that done." And
Yeah,
it's like you
yeah.
ruined the franchise by not recasting. But in this sense, I had to think of one where it's the same role in the same series, the same trilogy, and the role has been played by three different people. And it's
Hmm.
recent enough to the point that it wasn't. I'll see if you can guess it. It wasn't meant as a trilogy. It was actually supposed to be 6 or 7 movies, but it is now forever a trilogy because this and so many other decisions fucked it so badly that no one wants to make this anymore. I am, of course, talking about the Fantastic Beasts series, where we started off with a perfectly excellent, now Emmy winning villain in Colin Farrell. Like, where he was playing Grindelwald, like in disguise. And then at the end, for no reason, with nobody asking for it, in the most prototypical sign that J.K. Rowling does not understand the modern era. It was the first hint. It was when we still thought J.K. Rowling was a nice person or like at least a good creator. And then it was the first hint that no, she's gone. She's gone. She's like, what if Johnny Depp though? And he just changes in the movie. Like they recast it in the movie, and nobody
Yeah.
was like, we need a better actor for this because it's Colin Farrell and he done an amazing job. It was a really good movie. And literally, as soon as that happens, it's like, well, I enjoyed the movie, but I've lost faith in the franchise. And like, it's at the very end. And then Johnny Depp, because he's Johnny Depp, has his whole rigmarole that we don't need to get into. So they have to recast again to Mads Mikkelsen, who excellent actor and probably the best Grindelwald we got. But because there was 3 movies and 3 Grindelwalds, we had so much, and the entire thing is driven by Dumbledore versus Grindelwald, and it's like introducing Darth Vader in your first Star Wars movie and then coming back and Darth Vader is all of a sudden red for no reason. Like, and it's just like, why? What's happening here? I don't understand the mythology you're trying to create here. And now we just don't have it anymore. It doesn't exist. You can barely talk about it these days. People don't think of the and it's the Harry Potter franchise. It is like I went to see Harry Potter and the Cursed Child in London there in January. And it still captures people. It still fills the house. People still love that IP, regardless of J.K. Rowling being 21st century J.K. Rowling. And they just fucked it so bad by recast. Like, that is impressive. Because if you were to say there's certain franchises that studios are going to keep going back to, no matter how bad they are, because they'll pull in a crowd, it'd be like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. They'd be kind of Star Wars, Marvel. They'd be the ones that you'd kind of assume they will stick with this. And this was just one of the many decisions that just made it. So yeah, that is pretty spectacularly bad recasting. Which in hindsight, I'm feeling kind of better about Captain America now. They didn't fuck it that much, but let's not get too positive. We are going to discuss Captain America. We're going to discuss our movies of the month. Of course, it is Oscars week this Sunday. Conan O'Brien takes to the Dolby Digital stage to host my most anticipated Oscars in I can't remember how long because of Conan, just the Conan.
Agreed.
But actually interesting as well. There's a lot to discuss, so we're going to give our picks. Last year, we pretty much did identical picks. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think it's a bit more debatable. We can get a good sense now of what we think is going to win, but I think we're going to differ on a few things. So we don't know, though. And another thing we don't know is what each other's movie of the month is. And this was an interesting month for me where it was honestly, I had 4 that I easily could have just said, pulled the plug and said, yeah, there you go. Or pulled the trigger and said, yeah, that's the one. Tom, were you similarly caught up and what did you settle on in the end?
Yeah, for me, it came down to 2 films. So I'll say the film that nearly got it, and honestly would have got it up until I only saw my actual movie of the month yesterday.
Okay.
So this was like nailed on, and I said I was anticipating it last show. And that was September 5.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that's a when you just there's like a topic in history or something where like that is such an interesting thing to me. Like I'm really interested in that whole the Munich Olympics kind of attack, especially because we also had Munich by Spielberg, which I think is one of his great underrated films. And then when I got this, I was like, okay, but how do you make it fresh? How is it interesting? And then it kind of devolved into the media side of it, and I like that's also I'm like, oh, that's also something I'm fascinated by. So it's just these 2 things I'm interested in, connected at the hip, and then even using real news footage and like this the suspense of it was kind of it was there, but it was there for like totally different reasons. Like it when we normally watch that, the suspense is will the hostages get out? No, but obviously while that's still there, you're kind of like the suspense of how are they going to cover this? How can they cover this ethically? What about like I can't believe they got a film like got me to care about. Oh God, do they have the satellite so they can broadcast this? Like that's not something I ever thought I'd actually give a shit about.
How will their journalistic integrity survive this?
How will people watch this on TV
dilemma?
in the 70s? Like,
yeah, amazing, amazing.
And that's what I mean. It's like one of those movies where I'm just like, oh, this is a really interesting spin on something that I thought we'd seen enough of.
Mm.
Again, also got really great performances in it. From again, like there's actors in this, like I recognize a few of them, but there's a lot of actors that are just like they're total unknowns, and I hope they have long careers after this because they were fantastic.
Yeah.
But
I
for
I
what
just a word on September 5 because that was one of my four as well, and I like yes, the format worked so well that I wanted this to be a TV series. Do you know what I mean?
yes,
Where it's like
agreed.
that's where I was like, I want more of this. I want like this. You've created a genre here, and it's like historic events, but it'd be weird if it was the same cast. And it's like, what
Yeah,
history are we covering today? You'd have to literally do the Trump
like
administration because
it should
that's
literally be like a Ryan Murphy like American news story, you know,
yes,
like that's what it should
yes,
be like because it was
yeah.
so it was gripping like for the stuff you don't even think about where I'm just like, especially because it was like it was that far removed where like it was like, oh yeah, they're making graphics for the thing, or they're
Yeah.
they have to blow up other things and like all these things that I wouldn't have thought about back in the day, like, you know.
Yeah, and how seamless the entire thing was because I obviously came in knowing that they weaved in and out of like real footage and then with this, but the host of I didn't know until I came out of it and I looked it up that Jim McKay, the host of the show, I'm like, he's an actor. Like he has to be acting because they've got it, the timing so perfect. Like you can
Yeah,
see him turn to camera and you're like, that's real. Like they managed to make a movie and time it so perfectly that it fit. It was so expertly made. The
yeah.
only thing that held it back from me from being movie of the month was that it did make me want to see Munich. There was
Mm,
a lot of Lubin where I wanted just a little bit of fucking, you know what I mean? And I'm
yeah,
like you know, the ending was I appreciated a lot of it, and I'm not going to obviously give away the ending, but like, there was one line that kind of says how like they were so devastating because I appreciated the ending, and like one character just turns around to the other and is just like, "See you tomorrow," and I'm just like, "Oh my god, this is these people's lives. Like that's fucking that's
yeah,
a day we got." And it was like to me, this is Tuesday. It was one of those like hard hitting lines, and but like when it got to the kind of the climax of kind of the hostage situation, and it is history, so I'm aware I can't like you can't really spoil history, but um I wanted to see more, and then the movie kind of fell in on the limitations of the format, and I
yeah,
respected it, but I did want to kind of get in and around it. But again, just I did love this movie. I loved how it's an Israel Palestine movie in the middle of an Israel Palestine war
mhm,
that somehow manages to just dodge the issue entirely. I thought that was
yeah,
masterful because I didn't want it to become a commentary. I didn't want some people to say, yeah, but these people should be free. And I'm like, I've seen that debate. I know that debate. That's not what this is about. And that's not where the debate was back
yeah,
then. So like make it about history, make it. So it really excellent movie and it did make my top four. But yeah, again, just fell short, same as yourself. Sorry,
yeah.
didn't mean to cut you off. I did want to
No,
give
not at
that
all. No,
shoot
I think again the fact that we're discussing it in this much in depth that tells people how much they really should see it regardless. You know, I
Yeah.
know it's just gone up on streaming in America, so I assume it won't be far behind here. But yeah, well worth checking out. My movie, the one that ended up being something that's also historical. It's more removed from the history that's telling. It's kind of more contextual. And honestly, I didn't realize until the ending that it was a true story. It is the last of the best picture nominees for me to check out. And it is I'm Still Here. Um,
Yes.
which again, I mean it's also nominated for best foreign language film. This was I mean it came out literally the weekend before the Oscars here. Like I don't even know if it's out everywhere yet. This film just kind of knocked me on my ass. And I think what it came down to wasn't just the history element of it or the interesting story or perspective that again September 5th had as well, or September 5th, um, is that there was such a raw emotion to this that I felt just kind of emanated out of the screen. This is, for those who don't know, a story of, and I won't give too much away, don't worry. Is basically about a family living in Brazil when there's a military dictatorship in the country, as there would be from the 60s into the mid 80s, I believe. And essentially, it's just this family living their life under this dictatorship, and when they come into conflict with kind of the regime, the army, as it were, and how the family reacts to these changes, how the family kind of survives these changes. And again, I'm being deliberately vague here because I don't want to
Mm.
give away what actually happens. But what might sound like a really oppressive and kind of, I would say, tough watch, it's not that entirely. There is a lot of moments of kind of hope and the idea of like endurance and how people move on and survive these things. So there was enough of that in it where I was just kind of gripped. And there's a lot of films like this where it's almost just kind of misery porn, for lack of a better word. And it wasn't that. And that's not saying this
No.
is a happy film. It's absolutely not. But what it really nailed as well is the family dynamic of the whole thing. Like we get a good chunk at the start of the film where it's just where you'd almost not even be aware there's some sort of dictatorship on. It's very much in the background to the point where you're like, that's a little bit horrifying. You're hearing about bits on the news, you're seeing like military trucks go by and seeing like blockades and all these things. But it just seems like a normal family who have like this idealistic life, and then all of a sudden, kind of the regime and the army come knocking at their door, and that's when things start to change. And I was one that again I didn't ever really know where it was going to go, and that suits as well because that's how the characters in the film feel as it goes through with the stories. It's really a story about kind of the endurance of like the human spirit in moments like this, dealing with trauma and grief, which again sounds very, very heavy. But again, it's based on a true story of a woman called Eunice Paiva. And the lead for this, I just have to get up her name, is just outstanding. She
Fernando
was
Torres.
there it is, Fernanda Torres. She was just amazing. You know, it's like
Mm.
it always sounds really dumb to say like, oh, when you see an actor from like a foreign language film, you're like, they're amazing, and it's like, well, this is just someone who should be in everything. Like, it's such a like flawless and kind of fearless performance as this strong maternal figure. Even when she's put in the most extreme conditions, or when she's even like scenes where she's just trying to keep it together for the family, like it feels so real. To the point where I was like, again, I didn't know this was a true story. I'm watching it and I'm like, this is coming from a really raw and emotional place. Like, and I can tell that there's something really horrific, like either about to happen, or this is a film where it's like it's too real to be fake. Do you know what I mean? As stupid as that
Mm.
sounds. It's also just like impeccably cast in the rest of the family. Like you actually grow and get a sense of all the siblings and the children, and the father in the film. You actually are just like really rooting for this family, even though there's a lot of elements where the larger elements of the family, the younger kids, are kind of being shielded from the kind of horrors of this. And there's moments where you don't feel like you're fully aware of what the situation is. You're like, I think everything's going to be okay though, right? And it becomes a film about how these stories that kind of are impacting the media and the power of media in situations like this, and moments of rebellion or moments of oppression. And it just kind of knocked me on my ass. It's one of those movies, and I think it's always a good metric, is like when you watch a film and the credits start to roll, or you're like, let's go. Or you just kind of sit there and you're like, oh, I'm just going to take a
Mm.
moment to let that weigh on me a little bit. And I that was kind of unanimous in the screening I went to. Shot incredibly well, cast incredibly well. Just felt like a film that was again rich. It never overstayed its running time. There's kind of two epilogues to the film as well, where it kind of goes ahead in time, and I feel like those were incredibly justified as well. A lot of these films sometimes I feel like they take jumps in time, and I'm like, why did you do that? Except because you just didn't have an ending back then, you know. Here it felt like it was needed, and yeah, like I think without getting into Oscar predictions, I mean, it's certainly more deserving than Amelia Perez of Best Foreign Language Film. I think it's one that a lot of people should see. It's incredibly emotional, but also not as dreary or depressing as it might sound. There's a hopefulness to it that I found very good, and like in a moment in time where there's so many kind of oppressive governments and the idea of fascism on the rise around the world, the idea of that we can endure through that, I think that's needed right now. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you picked this one because it's not mine, but it was one that was. I really need to pick this because this is the smarter pick than what I've gone with, but the other one just hit me. But I love to get to talk about this. And what I love most about this is the story behind it as well. It's made by Walter Salles. I think I've got that name right. But he
Mhm.
was the director of Central Station, which is the last Brazilian international film Oscar. And he actually directed it with Fernando Torres' mother, Fernanda Montenegro, who stars in this movie as well, like has kind of a cameo at some stage. And there's a familial aspect to this that really, really works. It works for much the same reason in a very strange way because of everything that Tom is kind of alluding to that sounds dark and dreary, but I also appreciate that in that it was actually probably weirdly the nicest cinema experience I had in February, despite there being harrowing elements to this movie. Um, because Salas grew up with Eunice Paiva and like he was a neighbor of hers, so he knows her story and they stayed friends like until late in her life. And that was she died only last year, just after this movie came out. But um this movie works for the same reason that you might watch on Colleen Kuhn. And that's a weird thing to say because it's such a different movie, but it was just nice. I watched it when it opened over here, and by the way, the cinema chains fucked up. The big cinema chains, particularly, I'm going to call out Odeon. I love you, Odeon. I have my members card, but they fucked it here because they prioritized Bridget Jones and Captain America, and I'm sure they did well in their respective rights, but they didn't show this. So I watched it in the Lighthouse, which I'm more than happy to go to, and I feel like Odeon really underestimate the Brazilian market in Ireland because this
Yeah.
was sold out every screening and it was brilliant to see. And I couldn't wait to go because I knew it was sold out to the point that Lighthouse Cinema had to send us an email beforehand saying, "We're sold out. Come a half an hour early. Get your seat. Don't at us if we're sold out because this is just selling like hotcakes." And it was unbelievable to sit there. And I was kind of like going, "What's it going to be like?" I love those kind of things where I'm sitting among people who this story has resonance to, and
Yeah.
this is their lives they're seeing play out. It's really meaningful. But also Brazilians are fun, so I'm like, is there gonna be an atmosphere here? Is it gonna be a bit of a party? Like, so I'm like, what's it gonna be like watching it? But there was just this really somber, nice vibe there because the way they shot the movie is Salas he actually shot it sequentially. So it was shot in order, which you never see in movies because it doesn't make sense location wise and stuff like that
Mhm.
a lot of the time to do so. But he did it for a reason, purposely, so the family could build and grow and bond as a type of makeshift family unit so that you'd feel that on the screen. And it fucking worked. It was so, and the reason that on Colleen Kuhn was so nice to watch is it's just nice to watch nice people get the things they need and be loved and be in happy situations. It's just nice to see that play out on screen. It's just nice to feel chemistry with characters and to feel that familial love and bond and to see that played out so authentically. And that's how this film feels. It feels authentic. It feels almost documentary like it sometimes. Like the camera just happens to be there. Um, and the Brazilian crowd was by no means rowdy or anything like that. They were very tepid. They were very like having a like kind of like knowing laughs and stuff like that. But it was just you could feel the weight of the emotion of them watching this. And I actually, it's one of these things. I went by myself as I do a lot of the movies because my movie schedule is far too stupid for anyone to ask anyone else to join me in it. But it got to the point that I really wanted to, and I started after the movie. I'm like, I'm sorry, do you mind if I ask you questions? Like, because there was Brazilian people sitting beside me, and I'm like, do you know this story? Does it mean a lot to you? And they're like, yeah, we all know this story. Like, and I'm like, did you see yourself on the screen? And they're like, yeah, that's Brazilian, that's Brazil. And then I'm like, okay, that's so fucking cool. Because I felt that, like, just through watching it, having never been to Brazil. Why it didn't get movie of the month and where it fell down a little bit, and this is a strange thing to say, is it didn't break me enough. Do you know what I mean? Like it did, like there's a very defined point. You know something's coming, but you're also basking in the happy family upbringing and the chemistry of everyone and the little slagging and jokes they have, and you actually just want to live in that neighborhood and know these people and have them be your neighbors and stuff. You're basking in that, and then there's a very defined point where it turns, and it feels horrible because the film establishes so much what this family lost and is losing through that horrible incident, kind of changing their lives forever. But they don't lose themselves, and that kind of is what the story is, how they don't lose themselves in spite of it, and they manage to keep that sense of family and love and everything that was so special, despite what happens. But like, yeah, it just felt like there was a lot of it you don't get to see, and I appreciate it. And it was a story, it was a decision by Salah's made, clearly. And I don't think it's a decision that didn't work, but it's just one that where this could have broke me over the top was to have a really emotional reaction when you kind of get the cathartic moment towards the end. I won't get into the hows and the whys and the whats, but when you get that catharsis at the end, I didn't necessarily feel that as much, and I didn't notice people feeling it as much. I felt there was a lot more emotional weight at the start, and it front loaded. Whereas the end, it was like, oh, great, yeah, okay, I'm happy, like, or whatever, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's the only reason it fell down. But it was an excellently made movie, it deserves it, and if it wins best Oscars or best international film, I'll be very happy. My film feels kind of insignificant to talk about it after that, but
I think I know what it is based on that.
yeah, I just loved this fucking movie. And I kind of signposted this last time out because I'd seen it, but technically it could fall into the February bucket because it made me ask weird questions like, did I enjoy this more than The Brutalist? I think I enjoyed this more than The Brutalist, but I've only seen it like yesterday, so I don't think enough time has passed. And I'm still asking myself that same question. It is, and please don't look up anything about this, and I won't tell you anything about the plot because if you walk into this fresh, it is such a fun experience. Companion is my movie of the month. I loved this. This was just a fun time at the movies because I had no idea about what I was walking into. I just heard that it was a good movie, and I knew Jack Quaid was in it. Jack Quaid from The Boys, Huey, if you don't know him, but like Jack Quaid was in it, and I'm like, I quite like him, and I'm told this is a good movie, and fuck me. It is the most I'll come to kind of giving you any description about what it's like is it is. Do you remember the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix? It is that meeting Megan, except all the characters in it are from Knives Out. You know what I mean? There's a comic touch to the characters and a lightness and stuff like that as well. But there's also heavy tones, but there's also a Black Mirror vibe to it as well. And and it has that Black Mirror vibe of this is something we'll be living with in 5 years. This is an actual thing that this is a scenario that will happen in the real world. And we're not that far off it. Someone is working on something here. I just thought it was so clever. It was so entertaining. It opens with the line, and again, this is the opening line, so it's not giving away much. Is the day I met Josh, the 2 days that changed my life, or the day I met Josh, and the day that I killed him, and it's just like, and it just goes from there, and you're like, how does he get here? What happens here? The cast are amazing. You've got Sophie Thatcher in there. And again, to kind of speak about why she's amazing is to give away too much of the movie than I'm willing to do. Because again, this is a movie that benefits from going in and having the twists and turns. Because you think when the first twist happens, you're just like, right, that's the twist. I get it. And then it just keeps twisting and twisting and twisting and twisting. And it's just like, it is an absolute riot. It was originally, it's directed by debutante Drew Hancock, who also wrote it. The pitch was initially for Barbarian director Zach Kreger to follow up there. So if you like Barbarian, and I really did, it's another really fun kind of horror-y sci-fi type movie. That's the tone, and you can see why Kreger was kind of pegged for this one. It's really on the nose kind of humor at the start where it's like they're leading you one way to think that it's about something, and then it's not about that, but it's not about it in the way that you think it's going to be about it, especially if you don't know what's going on. I loved seeing Guillermo Harvey Guillen,
Yeah.
Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows. I thought he was fantastic. I thought, like, again, just what he did with that character, because again, it's a character that you meet and you assume you know everything about. I thought he was fantastic, but I can't like can't really talk too much about it, and that's what's frustrating. Just go see it, and trust me. I texted because I'm that guy who, like, as soon as I see a movie that I'm like, I know that someone will like it, or it's their type of movie. Like, you know yourself, like we've got a very good idea of what type of movie the other will like from doing this show. But I texted Kev, who I do What You're Watching with, and I texted him as soon as I came out, and I'm like, "This is a you movie. Go see it." Do not look up anything about it. Just go today. Trust me. And then like he gets back to me. He's like, holy shit. Yes, it is a me movie. Um, if you're into Black Mirror kind of horror vibes, it is gory at times. It's very, very funny. Um, it takes characters and actors who you feel like you know and messes with them and allows them to show new layers. And what really works for me is that it never, I mentioned Knives Out there, but Knives Out eventually becomes a bit of a caper or a bit of a game. And it's fun to play. It's almost like a who done it where you're guessing that. This doesn't evolve into that. It tells a very defined story and a fun story, like an A grade episode of Black Mirror. And it isn't afraid to shock you or throw twists on top of what you think you need, because just like it just keeps twisting, and I just can't get enough. I just had so much fun with this movie. It may end up on the top 10. I want to see it again, and I want to see if it impacts me the same way that it did initially without knowing anything. But I loved it, and it's just a great movie. Did you get a chance to see Companion, and what were your own thoughts?
I did, and honestly, totally valid pick. This was to me so far the most pleasant surprise of the year. I think what where it fell down for me, and I don't, it's not the film's fault in and of itself. Like you were saying that you had to go into this blind. I had this kind of spoiled for me,
Oh
because
no.
you know when you
Oh,
just see it when you sit down to watch a movie and they play the trailers beforehand, and yeah, and I think like it's
they
interesting because
showed the
like the
trailer
movie.
of this beforehand.
No, no, they showed the trailer just in another movie last year, and I
Oh
just knew
no.
the elements of it. And it's weird because there was two trailers for it. The first trailer apparently gave nothing away. The second trailer did. Even the
Uh,
posters like are a little like make you think a bit too much, perhaps.
yeah.
Um, and the movie I actually kind of thought it reminded me of is I don't know if you ever saw Ready or Not. Um,
Mm.
but it kind of reminded me a lot of that. And when we're talking about the marketing for this, I'm going to spoil the movie from last year. I'm going to spoil the movie Abigail because it's kind of a similar situation. Because we had the movie Abigail last year, and the big twist that was ruined by the trailers, ruined by the posters, basically, is that it's a big heist movie, and they kidnap this little girl. And as it turns out, the little girl is a vampire, and now they're fighting a vampire.
Yeah.
The thing is, the movie without that doesn't have a hook. So they kind of have to show their hand a little bit. And they did that with the marketing for this. And it's a shame that they did because the amount of people who have heard that knew nothing about it and went into it loved it. I also loved it. I've met other people who knew what it was going in. In fact, I was speaking to one person who basically told someone the twist to get them on board to see the movie, which again totally works. But yeah, it's like regardless if whether you know what happens or not, maybe some people are put off because they do know what the kind of hidden elements of this is. It is still such a fun romp. It's kind of being sold as a horror, and it is, but it's not like a really heavy or scary horror. It's more of
No.
like a comedy thriller a little bit. I thought like Jack Quaid is someone who I just love, like love him in The Boys, and also every time I like see him interviewed or popping up on like random YouTube series I watch, I'm just like Jack Quaid. Like I feel like I could just be mates with the guy. I'm just I'm just like, come on,
Yeah.
Jack. So he's great in this, and kind of playing against type a little bit as well, which is a lot of fun, you know.
Mm.
There's also Sophie Thatcher, who was excellent in Heretic last year. She just totally made the most of this role. What I also really loved about this movie is, and this is something I mentioned when we were talking about the substance before, is that it kind of gives you every single element they could possibly do with the
Mm.
character. Like when you're like, okay, there's no more. And again, honestly, there was moments where I was like, they've run out of road here, and then they're just like, but we haven't got tried this way. You know, like there's little elements that like the character will do something where you're like, I hadn't thought they could do that, but actually that makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't they? And yeah, like again, you mentioned Megan, and I think that's another very valid comparison. It does kind of remind me of that. And again, that was a really fun movie, but I think even this, like, this is one where, like, if it ended up in my top 10, it could happen. But if nothing else, it's one that I'm done to be like, that was one of the real pleasant surprises of this year, to be honest. And
Yeah.
will it hold up to a rewatch? I think absolutely will, because I knew what the kind of big twist to the whole thing was anyway. And it still worked out. Also, like the being aware of the twist, I was kind of checking for when it was going to come in. It comes in
Yeah.
relatively early. It's not.
Mm.
Again, it's not like something that hangs over the film the whole time. Like when we were talking about Abigail, I think like the twist comes like an hour into it. Whereas here, I think it's maybe in like the first 20. It's in the first half hour at the very least. So yeah, absolutely worth checking out. Definitely a winner. Glad to see it's doing well and getting a good word of mouth, because whatever Drew Hancock does next, it immediately has my interest based on this.
Yeah, 100%. The last honorable mention I want to give a mention to is The Seed of the Sacred Fig, which just is a fascinating story. It's made, written, produced, and directed by Mohammed Rasuluf, who's an Iranian filmmaker who now, as a result of this movie, lives in exile in Europe. This movie had to be made in secret in Iran because it is very politically controversial, and it tells a story about the Iranian kind of regime, and it is a smothering story. In that it again focuses very much, like I'm Still Here, on a family unit, and it feels COVIDy, but it feels COVIDy when you realize that it has to tell the story in secret. Like September 5 as well, it blends a lot of real life footage of kind of police brutality and stuff that happened, and it's through the phones of the children who are growing up in modern day Iran, watching it and sharing it online and feeling a different way. And like, again, I won't get too much into it as well because it's not my movie of the month, but it's a movie that like is a very serious political movie, but very smartly told. Um, and when you know the backstory, like the lead couple in this they can't leave Iran currently, because immediately as soon as the government caught wind of this, Rasuluf had to make the decision in 2 hours to either go to jail or flee the country, and he fled the country. And the couple were brought, and all of the cast were brought in for questioning. The couple aren't allowed to leave the country now as a result, which kind of proves the point that Rasuluf was looking to make. But you have this quite serious, heavy movie, and then what makes it so thrilling is that it becomes The Shining, and you're just like, what? But it works. And somehow you're just like, how is this The Shining and how am I loving it? Like, what the fuck is going on? The ending didn't work for everyone, so I get it. But for me, it had earned the goodwill to become a thrilling movie by the end. It's also up for Best International Film against I'm Still Here. Resentfully not against Kneecap, but I'm not holding a grudge or anything. But yeah, The Seed of the Sacred Fig. I don't know. Did you get a chance to see that? I don't know if it's out your way yet.
It was in the cinemas for like less than a week, and I didn't
Yeah.
get to see it. So, but yeah, and it's a long one. I think that was all, was like the timing of it. I was like, maybe next week I'll have more time, and then it just wasn't there.
It is long. Yeah, it is. It doesn't feel it when you watch it, because there's a lot of different kind of chapters to it, and it kind of
Mhm.
escalates in a very it moves along at a decent pace, but it's quite long. It's 2.5 hours or so. Anyway, we're kind of already talking about the Oscars, so let's get to it. Let's talk first. We're gonna go through our predictions, and we'll talk about this however we want to kind of, take it. So I guess we'll kind of start with the technical awards, because they'll kind of be the ones that you mightn't watch or you mightn't see, or some of them might happen off air. But is there anything you want to call out in terms of like, are you seeing any trends? Are you seeing anyone picking up anything, or how's that settling with you?
I think like when it comes to like any of the costuming and production design, I think it's Wicked's to lose.
Mm,
If we were getting into that, I mean, like anything you bring something from the stage to the screen, people really kind of love seeing how they adapt that and how they make it work from one medium to the other. And also, they're just so intricate. Like, I mean, and for a movie that a lot of people thought was green screen, when you see the big elaborate sets of those, I think it's pretty much nailed on that they're going to get any of those awards. Regardless, or not regardless, I said, moving on from that, like makeup and hairstyling is also going to be wicked.
yeah,
Like I think any of
agree.
the appearance based stuff, not cinematography or lighting or any of that stuff, but production design, costuming and hair. I think that's going to be a wicked kind of sweep there. To be honest,
Mm.
those are the first two that come to mind anyway. Those seem nailed on.
I've got Wicked for makeup and hairstyle. I now this is something that's gonna come back to haunt me this time next week. I think Conclave has now again Pope Francis' situation could like change things, but I think the voting's in by then. Um, I think Conclave is one of those movies, kind of like All Quiet in the Western Front. Won the BAFTA for Best Picture a few years ago, and then kind of did nothing at the Oscars, and that kind of is a trend that happens. Although Conclave did win the SAG Awards this weekend, so that tends
Hmm.
to correlate with what wins Best Picture at the Oscar. Um, I think Conclave isn't going to do well, but I think it's going to get some of the the kind of smaller awards. I've got that for costume design and editing because I feel that costume wise, I feel that that's going to work. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Wicked. I've got Dune. Part two, it was my favorite movie of last year, and I think this is one of those. We'll talk more in Best Picture that it should do better,
Hmm.
but I've got that down for like sound, production, design, visual effects, anything
Agreed. Yeah.
technical. I think Dune is coming away with
Yeah.
cinematography as well. I think Dune could make a pitch for that, but I think The Brutalist has that
Yeah, that seems
nailed
pretty
on.
brutalist heavy. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
and
like
and this,
the main upset one I could see for makeup, I think like the substance could get it as well.
yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Because you know, and it was again, it's sometimes with these awards they're looking for. It's kind of weird because sometimes they go like most obvious, you know, like
Mm,
it's what the people say about editing all the time as well. They're like, it's not always best editing; it's most clearly edited. And with
yeah.
makeup, it could be something like substance, even though like you know the substance makeup is really really impressive. Are we looking for something that is massive and clearly fake makeup, or are we looking for something that's just kind of nice, kind of glamour and that kind of stuff? So it kind of it's always an interesting category to see how people vote in those ones, you know?
Yeah. I think yeah, like I could see Wicked coming away with nothing, and it's just kind of get the
Yeah.
Barbie vote where it's like you should just be happy to be here, and we got you to be able to get, Ariana Grande and Cynthia on the invite, like, and get the shots of them in the crowd. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see it win a makeup at least. International is a bit of it's like kneecap, like for me is better than any of these, but it is still a bloodbath. You've got See the Sacred Fig and I'm Still Here, which you spoke about. Girl with the Needle. Haven't actually watched it. Emilia Perez, again, it looks like it might be getting snubbed. The toxicity of the movie has kind of ruined a lot of its momentum that it had coming into this. And then you've got Flow from Latvia, which I haven't seen. So
Mhm.
what are you feeling for this? Do we want to get behind I'm Still Here?
I yeah, I mean, I haven't seen See the Sacred Fig or the needle one. The name is escaping me there.
Girl
Girl
with the
with the Needle, is
Needle.
it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I actually have seen Flow because it went up on an American streaming service I have.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I think it's good, but again, it's kind of a weird one because even though it is foreign language because it was made by a foreign animation studio, there's no dialogue in it. Like, so I don't think they're necessarily going to go for that. Like, again, it kind of would feel a bit strange. And like, honestly, the fact he got nominated there at all is kind of impressive, for an animation.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what's going to happen with Emilia Perez. It's kind of the big question mark. It's the most nominated film here, but there has been such a backlash to it, and I could see it getting a few token awards. Like I think best original song, I think it might get something there.
Mm.
And I think I see it comes down to really sometimes with the best international ones, and I've kind of read a lot of like anonymous Oscar ballots over the years, and a lot of the time it comes down to just what have people been more likely to see. And the answer to that question is Emilia Perez because it's on Netflix. Like they
Yeah.
obviously get access to all these things, but I like I would be happy, and again, having not seen two of them, if I'm still here, got it. I kind of get a sneaky suspicion that this might be kind of almost a consolation prize for Emilia Perez. It's like, look, you might have done better if the thing didn't become an outright disaster, but you can have this one. And I don't think anyone will be too annoyed by that. Like, I mean, if it won Best Picture, it will go down in history as a big fuck up. But I think if people are like best, foreign language, people kind of move on from it and be okay with it. So I could see it winning that, kind of clinching it, even though I don't personally want it.
I'm gonna go for I'm Still Here because again it's also for Best Picture and kind of so it's really between the two because
Mm.
yeah, if you think these are the two of the 10 best movies and you don't think any of the others are, you're kind of tipping your hat. And I think I like from the movie standpoint, where the director is almost disowning it now at this stage, I think they've just
Mm.
made themselves too toxic to credit as a movie. But you can credit individual parts, and I think it will happen, particularly with one of the biggies. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm still here. Let's talk about original and animated animated screenplay, adapted screenplay. How are you feeling for the writing awards?
Yeah, for the writing ones, I'm kind of like for the original screenplay ones, I'm thinking it. I could really
It's
see it going
competitive,
to a. It's a
like it
really,
is.
really tough
It is a
category. Like,
battlefield. Like you've got Nora, the Brutalist, the Real Pain, September 5, the Substance. What side of bed are you getting out of? And like that's it on the day. Like, and it literally comes
yeah,
down to how do you want to perceive this um category? Like, is it the part where you give it to someone that's not going to win Best Picture, or is it where you just say, well, if it's the Best Picture, it's about like it's so tough and it changes every year. There's no trend for what wins this.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like for best original, like I think my gut says Nora,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's like this might actually be the hardest category of the night, to be honest. Like Nora is way up there, but I could easily see the substance actually getting it because it is such a kind of a it's like one of the popular films going right now. And again, as far as an original screenplay, like it's definitely freaking original. Um, Something like The Brutalist, like again, I think is like technically really, really impressive as far as the writing of it goes. So I could see that getting in there. And like there's a real strong honestly, there's a strong argument to make for A Real Pain as well. September 5, as much as I loved it, I don't think it's going to have a chance. So I do think I think it'll be an aura, but again, I do think that that one is almost a coin flip for me, and it would want to be like a three or four sided coin, to be honest. Um, like yeah,
It's a battlefield.
I'm going to say Honora, but if it went to the Brutalist, I could see that, and if it went to the Substance, I could see that. I think A Real Pain has a kind of an outside shot. I wouldn't say it got shut out, but it kind of wasn't as nominated as people might have thought. And I think that kind of hurt his chances a little bit.
I
Yeah.
think again, you have to read the lay of the land with the awards and how are people going to think, and then you have to divide it by Oscar and and kind of do that maths there. And it's definitely an incomplete science. I think A Real Pain is going to win this.
Okay.
If I had a vote, I'd pick Anora,
Hmm.
because I think it is the best written of these
Yeah.
movies. Um, but I think A Real Pain, it speaks the language of Oscars voters. Do you know what I mean? It's about an issue, it's about something serious, but it's very smart, it's very clever. It ticks a lot of writing boxes specifically. I don't think it has a shot at anything beyond one of the performer actor, like, well, I've just given away.
Hmm.
But like I don't think one of the acting roles, but I don't think it has a shot at the likes of Best Picture. I don't think it's in the mix there.
It is worth noting as well. The Writers Guild's picked Honora, but
Right. Yeah.
all over the shop, it was like the Golden Globe went to this one, the BAFTA went to this one. It's like they're as confused as anyone else here.
Yeah, it's wild. I think A Real Pain, my heart says an aura. Best writing
Hmm.
adapted screenplay is it's still a bloodbath. Emilia Perez
Yeah.
makes this easy. That's not going to win. But
No.
a complete unknown. It's not doing particularly well as a movie.
Mm.
Although obviously Chalamet got Best Actor at Screen Actors Guild to make it a bit interesting. Then you've got Conclave, really strong show. Nickel Boys, a very interesting pick, and Sing Sing, which I know is one you loved, I liked as well. Coleman Domingo in particular, I really liked. But I'd call that an outsider. How are
Yeah.
you picking this?
I think this is Conclave all day.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's just the fact that it's the one that most people will have seen. Again, I think it's also more likely that people have probably read the source material for it.
Mm.
I complete on like a few of these, it's almost like a technicality that they're best adapted. Like again, I loved Sing Sing, but I don't think there's any chance that it is going to be like have any chance in hell of winning here. The Nickel Boys, again, the book was apparently great. It's a well-renowned book, and was apparently excellently adapted from a novel that really wasn't easy. But I think like the technical sides of that film have kind of maybe overshadowed the writing aspects of it.
Mm.
Emilia Perez, I don't even fucking understand the way it's an adapted screenplay. I was like, they're like it's based on an opera, and then they're like, oh, where'd the opera go? And they're like, no, the opera never happened. He wrote it as an opera, but then he adapted it from that. And I was like, that seems weird. Like at
Yeah.
one point they did submit it as like best original, and then they're like, no, it's best adapted. So like it's a bit of a mess. Like it's really odd.
Like the
Um,
movie itself. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Who would have thought? But like the a complete unknown again, just like as much as it's based on a book, it kind of just feels like it could be. It didn't have to be based on a book, you know. It could have just been based on your research from having read a book. So I think it's Conclave. I think that's the one where it's definitely going to excel. It just seems like the one that. And then when you look at adapted screenplay, I think sometimes you kind of feel like you want kind of want like the richest and lived-in vibe of a novel that's been adapted to screen, and I don't think a lot of the others have it. Like
Yeah.
if you told me which one of these is based on a book, Conclave had all like these little details and aspects to it that I'm like that feels like it's adapted a novel for screen, and I think it's the one that has the best chance to be honest. I think it's a layup. I'd be shocked if it didn't win it to be honest.
I'd be absolutely stunned on picking Conclave here as well. Yeah, it's just nailed on for me. I'd like to see Nickel Boys. If I had a vote, I'd vote for that. Because I really enjoyed that of the selections we have.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think this is Conclave's to lose. Supporting actor and actress are kind of like in award season, they're very loudly and clearly being won by Kieran Culkin and of A Real Pain, obviously, and Zoe Saldana of
Hmm.
Emilia Perez, and that's where I kind of see Emilia Perez getting its big recognition. And to be honest, based off what I said about Emilia Perez before we even had any toxicity around it, I'm like, don't know how I felt about the movie, but Zoe Saldana was amazing. I said that at
Yeah.
the time, I think on this show. So I'm very happy for that. Do you see any upsets there, or would you like anyone else to kind of usurp the two?
I mean, I think yeah, I thought those are pretty much the clear ones. I mean, Edward Norton was really good in The Complete Unknown, and Yor Borisov was really good in an hour, but Kieran Culkin was just like, I mean, sure, he kind of feels like Kieran Culkin, or he feels like he's just walked off the set of Succession, you know, onto this one
Yeah,
a little bit, but he's too good for it, and he like steals that movie. Like without his performance, that movie is almost nothing. Like it's still a really good, it would still be a good movie, but his performance is what carried the whole thing. When it comes to best actress and supporting role, you know, I don't think when you go through the list, like Monica Barbaro, like was fine. I think like the problem is a lot of time when they have performances that are musical based, if the person is singing or playing instrument at the same time, they're just like, wow, well done. Like, you know, I don't think it's necessarily as well deserved. I think in her last year she would have been bumped out. Ariana Grande I thought was excellent as Linda, but I don't think as our girl Linda. But I don't think like she actually has a chance. I think she's kind of probably the popular pick, but I
yeah.
don't think she actually has a chance. I mean, again, there's another sequel like coming out next, like at the end of this year, so she'll get her chance again possibly. But well, I think it's Zoe Saldana. Like I think whatever about all the issues with that film, I think that she's one of the bright sparks throughout the whole thing. Is Isabella
I
Rossellini I talked about last time? She's pretty much like just about getting a mention. It seems like kind of a legacy nomination. And Felicity Jones was good, but I don't think it was anything like I don't think it necessarily warranted like too much of an Oscar thing. I think it was just that it was an Oscar nominated film, and she happened to be
Yeah,
good in an Oscar nominated film.
agreed. I'd love to see Ariana Grande win this of the performances, and if I had a vote, she get mine. It's the
Yeah,
performance of these performers I enjoyed the most, but I think Zoe Saldana actually gets a benefit from the toxicity of Emilia Perez because it's like, hey, Zoe did really well. Don't you take this away from her, and I think that's helping her momentum
yeah.
train. Um, and I'm happy for Kieran Culkin to get it. I like him a lot, and I like the performance. I would love, and I don't think it has a hope in hell of happening. But Yura Borisov, I loved him in Anora. I
Mhm.
think again, if I had a vote, I'd vote for him. But yeah, Culkin has this all day. Best actor, we kind of thought this was like sewn up as like we were walking into this. Adrian Brody seemed to be sweeping the boards in this, and then Timothy Chalamet came out of nowhere at SAG and ended up winning Best Actor there. Um, is that you've got Coleman Domingo obviously and Sing Sing, and again that's like I love that performance. Again, the movie I was
Yeah.
kind of like okay, but Ray Fiennes, Sebastian Stan, kind of lucky to be here. Maybe not even the best Sebastian Stan movie of the year. It's
That's what I
there.
was gonna say.
It's there to piss off Trump. Like that's why he's
Yeah.
here. So it's Brody or Chalamet. My head and heart says Brody. What are you thinking?
I think it's Brody all day. I mean, the
Yeah.
Chalamet one was like kind of like a surprise, and it was kind of the only thing that made people go, "Oh, maybe." I would love if it was Coleman Domingo, to be honest, because I think he
Mm,
just does great work and he kind of keeps getting like recognition and never getting his moments. But I also feel like Sing Sing is one that a lot of people didn't love as much as I did, and I also think it's one that kind of was not necessarily overlooked, but it certainly wasn't represented in the awards category, and partially because of some of the distribution, like it wasn't really well handled anywhere. But so yeah, I think like his moment will come again. So but I don't think this is him. As you mentioned, like I think Sebastian Stan was better in A Different Man last year.
mm, yeah.
This is very much kind of like a protest nomination. Not that he's not deserving. He is very good in the film, but I think it's very much if he won it, it would feel ill-gotten, you know. And yeah, like Ray Fiennes, I thought was good in Conclave, but it was just a role and a performance that I kind of feel like I've seen from him before. It would be one of those nominations that's like well done for all the work to this point. So I think it's
Yes.
Adrian Brody's to lose. Really, again, Timothy Chalamet, like he's young, like he's got plenty of time to win an
He's already
Oscar.
won an Oscar. Like he's grand.
Oh
He's
yeah,
fine.
Jesus, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, Jesus. So don't give it to him. Yeah, Jesus Christ, don't give it to him.
Yeah, and he's got a franchise too, like you know what I mean, in
Yeah.
Dune. So there's that too. Like again, like this performance, two of these performances, I'm like not even my favorite performance of the year from them.
Hmm.
Wild, but yeah, it's Brody. Look, he made a nearly 4 hour movie. Like that was a character study. He made it maybe the best movie of the year. Like that's you get your Oscar for that. Best actress. I'm loving the way this is going. I'm loving the way this is going. Um. I said it when we reviewed it on this show, and I'm like, Demi Moore for The Substance. I want it. It ticks all the boxes. It's the comeback actress, but it's also a fucking great performance. Um, but I expected it to get the squeeze in award season, and it's not going away. I feel like my head is saying it, my heart is saying it. She's never got the awards recognition. She's never got an Oscar. And like I think she's gonna fucking do it. I'll be fucking delighted if she does it. It is like an interesting one. You've got, of course, Cynthia Erivo's in there. Carla Sofia Gascon is not going to win. Fernanda Torres, a very like we spoke about her already, but it is between I think Demi Moore and Mikey Madison. Mikey Madison obviously won a couple of weeks ago at the BAFTAs and has been kind of making late charge at it. But I think Demi's going to get over the line because Oscar voters love the sentiment of it too. But it's sentiment with pun unintended substance too. I love this performance. I called it like when you're on the show, and I just can't wait to be right. Am I going to be disappointed though, Tom?
No, I think you're going to be proven right. Again, I was a bit less warm on Demi Moore's performance in Substance. I thought it was really good, but I didn't think it was necessarily awards worthy. But Hollywood loves the comeback story. You know, they love like we've had the Matthew McConaughey or whatever we kind of call it. Ke Huy Quan a couple of years ago. Like they love when people can make their comeback, and like it feels like Demi Moore is well deserving of that. She never really got the recognition she deserved, and she is great in this performance. And again, I think the film itself kind of almost makes the point. It would almost be a strong statement to be like, that's right. Like women of this age of Hollywood can still get good roles, and she is one woman who has been through the ringer, sit around, and manages to give us a great performance that is awards worthy. So I don't think it will be without merit either. I'm not taking it away from her. I think it's she's really good in the film. I would love if it was Mikey Madison for an Nora, but I don't think it's going to happen. Cynthia Erivo, yeah, I mean, he was good, but I don't think it was necessarily. I think it was more that they loved the film as she was had the lead in the film. To be honest, Fernanda Torres, again, we talked about her performance at length, but I just a lot of the time any of the foreign language ones are kind of in a major category. They don't really stand a chance. And yeah, Carla Sofia Gascon has just buried any chance she ever had, really. I mean, I think she's going to be there. There was talk that she might not be, or that Netflix weren't covering her travel. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a shame because I think it could have been an opportunity for
She
her,
would have absolutely. She would have
you
won it
know.
a hundred
Yeah,
percent. If not for her
and
old tweet, she would have won it.
that's what's kind of weird about this Oscar race. It's kind of there's a kind of an almost dirty element of like a lot of movies. And I saw someone say like it would be such a conclave way to win if every film just self-destructed around in Conclave one, which is like. Because it does have it. It seems like everyone. It feels like everyone was just taking notes and ratting out the other films. It was like, did you know that Brutus used AI? Well, did you see her old tweets? You know, it was like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's Demi Moore's to lose. You know, I think it's pretty much nailed on. Her name is probably already on it. But
Yeah.
Mikey Madsen might have an outside chance, but I don't think it's going to happen.
And I'd be quite happy as well. Like I'd have
Yeah.
no issue with Mikey Madison. I loved Honora, and again, Honora is kind of the one that like I'm kind of rooting for in the biggies in best direction and in big picture because it's the one that I loved enough, but also had like um has a realistic shot. I think we should probably pair these two together because it is the same conversation essentially. Best directing, you've got Sean Baker, Brady Corbett for The Brutalist, Sean Baker obviously for Nora, James Mangold for Complete Unknown. Good luck with that. Jacques Audiard, who I'm not sure even likes Emilia Perez anymore, and then you've got Corley Ferjat for The Substance, which, by the way, that's my outside pick. That's who I'd vote for because
Mm,
that film is a punch in the face, and it's the direction that does it. I just don't think it's going to swing that way. Best picture, we've got Honora, The Brutalist, Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. Um, yeah, like Brady Corbett's win direction, like that's happening, right? Is there an
mm,
argument against
uh,
it? I'd be into Sean Baker winning, and I think he deserves it,
yeah,
and I'd
like
love it, but I just
yeah,
don't
no,
see it.
I think the same with you. I would love if Carly Fargette got it.
Yeah,
To be honest, I don't think she will, which is a shame because I think that's a chance to kind of really break the mold of the directors kind of thing. I think like that's
yeah.
an exciting new voice that's kind of here now. That would have been an awesome pick. I do think it's Sean Baker or Brady Corbett though. I think it's going to be Sean Baker. Um,
Oh, okay. I'd love it if
I
he did.
do. Like again, I would be happy with either of them. I think they're both really good films, both really well directed films. I just think I think Brady Corbett's going to have his chances in a few years. I think Sean Baker's time is kind of now. I feel like he's just kind of been doing a solid kind of resume up through the last few years, and I feel like this is like the one that's totally broken through to get award recognition. Yeah, I think it's him. I think the
Okay.
only thing that's going against him is there is kind of the minor controversy about the intimacy coordinators and stuff. But again, Brady Corbett has the controversy of AI, which again,
Yeah.
this is what I mean, where everyone's just taking notes and ratting each other out, you know?
Yeah. I think he's fine. And again, like Mikey Madison has been very out
Yeah.
there with kind of look, I loved them. They were great. So I don't think that's gonna gain too much steam. I'd love it. I do think it's Brady Corbett's to win.
Hmm.
And I think it's or sorry to lose. And I do think it's the brutalists in best pictures to lose, but there is the possibility that Conclave comes along and shits in everyone's oatmeal. For me, look, this is a bit of the 1994 Oscars because it's essentially like what's the movie we're talking about in 20 years? And for me, of these movies, it is 1995 Oscars. It is going to be Dune Part 2. Like, I'm sorry, it was the best movie, my best movie last year. It is the movie that will redefine. It's a movie that every streaming service and platform is going to try make it Dune. They're already trying. It is definitive. Um, and it's kind of like essentially, but I don't think it's going to win. It doesn't stand a chance. So it comes down to the Brutalist, maybe Conclave, maybe Anora outside chance, and that's probably it for me. The Substance, if they go crazy, and I would jump and I'll wake up all my neighbors when I watch it live if The Substance get called out. I just don't see it happening. It comes down to them three, and for me, it's the Brutalists to lose, and I'd be okay with that. I'd like Anora to win as well. I really don't want Conclave to win. Tell me it's not going to happen, Tom, or is it?
I I can't say no. Like I like Conclave more than you, I think. But I yeah, it is the kind of one that I feel like I think a lot of people probably got around. They watched it over the Christmas and they're like, yeah, Conclave, yeah, it's great. I don't think it's if it won, it would be kind of it'd be the one that we're like, man, that was a weird year that they gave to Conclave, you know, because it's
Yeah.
definitely not deserved. Not it's like I do think it like I can see the argument for it being there, even though I probably wouldn't have personally put it in the best picture race, but I don't think it should win. I would love if the Substance one just because I'm like, holy shit, Hollywood went mental, like
Chaos, yeah.
you know. But my personal picks would be between again Honora and Brutalist, and I think those are the ones that have the best chance. And like, yeah, when the kind of, it's weird because the conversation of your you saying legacy there kind of threw me, like, because this does happen a lot of times when sometimes the Oscars, it feels like they're just like, this is the best film, this is the best film right now. And then it's like then a couple of years they're like, what one?
Yeah.
The artist won Best Picture? What is that? You know,
It's
like,
1995, for example. The reason I referred to that
yeah,
is
I know that,
because
yeah.
it's the famous one. It's
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction was there and Shawshank was there and Forrest Gump won. Forrest Gump, we've all seen it. Not a bad movie. Not better than Shawshank and Pulp Fiction. Not the movie that people talk about 30 years later. And that's what we're talking about with Conclave. It is a narrative movie, and it is so very Oscars to give it to that movie. So
Mhm.
I could see it happening, but it's just not the best movie. Anora is the movie that we'll watch. Like, no, sorry. Dune and The Substance is the movie I'd say people will be watching 20, 30 years from now. Okay. Particularly
Mhm.
Dune because it's a franchise. Anora has that rewatchability. None of us will ever watch The Brutalist again. Too long. Too long. It's like we experienced it. Grand. We'll never watch it again. But fine. It's an impressive cinematic feat. I respect that. I won't hate it.
Yeah,
Conclave
like
will age like fucking milk.
I don't know. They might. It has that last moment of the Pope possibly being dead. Who's going to be the new Pope? But it's got momentum. I
Yeah,
can't
that's what I
remember.
mean. It's so current. Like it's
I'm like,
so.
I'm like, when did the votes close? When did the Pope start dying?
That's
Oh.
what I mean. Was he? How sick was he at the time?
This could be the miracle that keeps him alive. He needs it.
He just rises. I'd like to thank the.
Like, it was last minute marketing push from the Conclave marketing team.
Fuck!
Like,
They got us again. That's the worst thing the church has ever done. Oh no, wait.
oh yeah, their spotless record is totally tarnished. But yeah, I like it's hard for me because I do think The Brutalist is a better film. I do think it is. Like, on my list of the best films of the year, The Brutalist was my number one.
Mm,
But like, I think Anora is more fun. Like, it's the one I would prefer to watch it. Like, again, it
happy with
says a
that.
lot that, as you said there, you haven't watched. You can only watch Brutalist once. Like, I watched it back in the Cork Film Festival, and I was like, I'm going to see it in cinemas. I still haven't gone back to see it yet. You know. Whereas like Anora, I was kind of like, man, I'm gonna give that another watch. Like, so
Yeah,
I I think it might be The Brutalist though. I think it will. I don't know.
yeah, I think so.
It's like, I think it will be The Brutalist because I think they kind of feel like that film is going to be much more important. I think like The Brutalist might be a film that people might study in 10 years, but I think people are going to be watching Anora casually themselves. You know. Um. But yeah, I do think it's going to be between those two, and I think that's the same for a lot of the categories. I think it's going to come down to those two, with Conclave having maybe an outside chance, for a few of these to sneak in there as well.
The only way I respect the Oscars, I don't respect the Oscars. No one respects the Oscars. It's a silly, silly exercise. We devote way too much time and energy, and every year we say we're not going to do it again. But then the February show comes around, and we need content. So yeah, yeah. But I think The Brutalist. I like if they give it to Conclave, I'm just like, this is fucking ridiculous. But it just feels like sometimes the Oscars do things to piss me off. So I can absolutely see it happening. So we'll see. Let's talk about something that's not going to win any Oscars or ever be talked about. And like I said, it's something you'll never watch again, except for the annoying fact that with Marvel movies, you kind of have to watch them to keep up with the next movie that's coming out. So maybe you will, but you watch it begrudgingly. Captain America, A Brave New World came out, the fourth Captain America movie, first obviously with Anthony Mackie in the lead role, and the continuation from Falcon and Winter Soldier. It's directed by Julius Ona, who directed the Cloverfield Paradox, off screenplay by Rob Edwards, who was twice nominated for Oscars. He won't be nominated a third time for this one. Harrison Ford obviously replaces William Hurt as Thaddeus Ross here after Hurt's 2022 death. Took on the role without reading the script. Probably a mistake you shouldn't be making, Harrison. Just off the basis of wanting to do Hurt's justice in reliving the character, and also the Brinks truck of money they drove up to his driveway. Let's talk about this. I don't think this movie requires a state of the MCU address. I just think it's a movie that for me didn't work. They had a lot of ideas and it aged out very quickly in a way they couldn't control, in that maybe if this was a different world we're living in and it wasn't playing to Trump's America, this movie might have felt differently. It might have been, I definitely think it would have been edited differently, and a lot of different creative post-production choices would have been made. Um, but it just felt like trying to show a new movie appealing to a world that doesn't exist anymore. Um, and I felt really bad for Anthony Mackie in this because I don't think he's a bad actor. I don't think he's a bad captain. I'm well up for him succeeding in this role, but I don't know. It didn't work for me. What were your thoughts, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've taken on a very depressing tone talking about this movie, and it's weird because yeah, it kind of just got me down. Like I was
Yeah.
just like, I so wanted to be something, I so wanted to be good, but it was just kind of nothing. Like the whole idea of like brave new world, and it's like, it wasn't brave. It didn't make any interesting creative choices. It felt like it was just, what did they do in the last ones? Okay, make it slightly different. There was nothing new about it for that same logic. And like the world, there was, didn't feel like there was any major changes to the Marvel world from this. And like there's been a lot of talk about the kind of decline of the MCU and how, there's like people are getting more involved now. And I kind of wonder, is this like the end of when they were like trying to pull out of tailspin, and like hopefully the next batch are going to be better?
Mm.
Because yeah, there's just nothing really exciting. It's kind of a mess. There's so many kind of storylines going on, and none are really given time to be any bit interesting. And all the stuff that is there that is moderately interesting is either stuff we've seen before, or it's like tying into like what, like a 17-year-old Incredible Hulk movie, which like very odd choice. And like don't get me wrong, I'm glad they're bringing things out from the cold, but it just kind of made the film feel like a little bit of an afterthought to me. And I agree about Anthony Mackie. I think it's a shame. I think he is a good actor, but I feel like maybe he's better as a supporting character. I feel like this was the moment to show that he has that, Sam Wilson can be this really interesting character that has a bit of depth, and what makes him worthy. Like I always go back to like how when did they nail Captain America in the MCU? And it's in the first Captain America movie when Steve Rogers jumps on a grenade, even though he doesn't have any superpowers, because it's the right thing to do. Like, where was that moment for him? And it's kind of weird that they almost treat him as a character that's like, oh, I'm not worthy. Oh, I can't fight aliens. And it's like, dude, we've been watching these films for a decade now. We saw you
Yeah.
fight aliens. What the hell are you on
Yeah.
about? You had a whole TV series about this, and it feels like even more so. They were like, all that stuff that you watched on Disney Plus, totally irrelevant. Like,
Mm.
like we had all this, but now I will say, like the thing I kind of liked the most about this was the performance by Cara Lumley as Isaiah Bradley, which kind of carries over from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The idea of, a man that is kind of out of time and trying to, find his place in the world, because he's been taken advantage of by the government, and how it kind of all goes wrong. And I kind of felt that was the only interesting kind of emotional thing. But like, there's a new Falcon in this. Like, I feel like there was nothing for him there to do. It just felt like, well, there's a new Captain America, there has to be a new Falcon.
Yeah.
And I never really got the sense that there was anything that made this film a film they needed to make, except for the fact that, hey, there has to be a new Captain America, and it's Sam Wilson. So I guess we have to show that he's on the same level as Steve Rogers. It just felt a little bit directionless. And
Yeah.
it's a real shame. Like even by the end, I was like, okay, what's changed here? There's a vague plan set up for the future. Like, I mean, the
Even
red,
and this
like,
is not giving
I don't
anything
know.
away because there's nothing to give away, but we can talk about the post credit scene here, and we
Yeah,
don't have to talk about specifics, but like the post credit scene was so typical of the movie in its entirety. And it
yeah,
was the audacity of them making you wait the full. It wasn't even a mid credit scene, it was the very end. And essentially, it was just one character saying to another, stuff will happen in the future. There's
yeah.
nothing. It didn't tip
It
its hat. It wasn't interesting. It was literally like stuff will happen. And it's like,
didn't
yeah,
it.
that is the general idea of a post-credit
Didn't
scene, but
it
you have to
didn't it
fill it
feel
out.
like it felt like, they had like they wrote a note down on like they were like,
Yeah.
something is coming, and they're like, well, we'll fill it out on then, and they got to the day and they're like, fuck, we
Kevin will
never wrote
tell
down
us.
what's coming.
Kevin
Something
will
is coming.
text
Things
us.
will
And then
happen.
he hadn't texted. And they're like, we've got everyone here. We have to write the scene. He's going to tell us what to say. And he just left him on scene. And that's how it
Yeah.
feels. It feels like Marvel just forgot this was happening and they kept making a movie, but they didn't want to ruffle any feathers. So like they just
Yeah.
made and they're like, I don't think anyone's gonna be too mad if we make a sequel to the Incredible Hulk movie. And it's like, no, we all hated that movie. It's like, no, it did
Uh,
feel like that though. It definitely didn't feel like a Captain America movie. And yeah, I totally agree that every like they just threw you into this world that, like you said, had nothing to do with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was a flawed TV show, but an interesting TV show. One that swung about 60 different times in different directions. But like you could appreciate it that it tried stuff. But again, like this just felt like a bottoming out of that version of storytelling. It's actually, fun fact, it's the third Marvel movie in history that's released on Valentine's Day. The first was 2003 Daredevil, and the second was Madame Web, and it is in good company. That is where this movie fits. Like it is like, don't see a Marvel movie on Valentine's Day. This confirms it. It was just, I'm not worried. We've got like as a Marvel fan, we've got Daredevil Born Again next week. That's going to be
yeah.
fucking great because Daredevil's always great. Um, I even think Thunderbolts looks a lot of fun. Now, I've thought that, and sometimes it hasn't been fun in recent years. I'm not worried about the greater state of Marvel of this because, again, it just feels like, again, like that's the way of it, where it's like Kevin's going to text us and we're going to fill in all the blanks for how this matters. And he just forgot this movie was being made. And then they had a release date and it got released and we all went and saw it. And it was like a wet fart. And yeah, I just
Yeah.
feel bad for Anthony Mackie.
Like I feel like I've genuinely mostly almost forgotten bits of it already, like which is not a good sign. And like I actually just feel like obviously Anthony Mackie deserved a better movie, but it feels like the movie itself had no confidence in him anyway. It feels like they
Mm.
give him like three or four speeches where he's like, "This is why I'm Captain America," and I'm Captain, and that's like, man, you gave this at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and you keep giving us like these "I'm Captain America" speeches. Like, just show us something where that makes you like feel like a hero, and like one a character in the film, and I won't say who a character it is, says something to him, where I'm like, oh, that sums it up. But like, why did you need to say that to him as opposed to him just like coming up with his own conclusion instead of constantly being like, "That's right. This is what America's about." Blah blah blah. You're like, dude, it's fine. You're going to go fight a big red monster. It's not that serious. Like, like it's cool, man. It's cool. And I don't know. Like, I would say, like, I thought some of the action scenes were good.
Yeah,
There's a good fight scene
agreed.
between Captain America and Giancarlo Esposito. Is it Sidewinder is his character's name?
Mm.
And there's a decent kind of aerial fight scene. But I think the big problem with like this is like they like and people used to say this before it was true. People were like, "Oh, these characters are invincible," and that wasn't true for a long time. But like there's a scene in this movie where like the guy just gets his ass kicked, and it's like, "Oh, well, I had you know Kevlar, and I had this, and this, and that's why." And like every time he lands, he's just shooting out like vibranium waves all over the place. I'm like, this is so pointless and wasteless. Well, like like the gimmick of this character is that he's not taking the super soldier serum. Lead into that.
Yeah.
Like, don't just
Yep.
make it like he's invincible anyway. The suit is it because then it's like, oh well, anyone that wears a suit can be Captain America. Fine,
Like
great.
fucking Daredevil, we just spoke about it. It's coming out now. Great example.
Yeah,
Gets his ass kicked, but gets back up, and that's what makes him a hero. You know what I mean? Like it's there.
yeah.
You go. Like it's yeah. I don't know. Anyway, look, let's move on to I don't know, a better topic. I want to talk about Bridget Jones, released on the same day. Mad About the Boy, third movie in the franchise. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen this movie, but I do want to discuss it because Bridget Jones, and I like a lot of British comedy. I think it gets a lot of plaudits that it doesn't deserve because the best of the best is quite good. You're talking your epic shows like Faulty Towers and so on, like your kind of your legendary ones, Monty Python, even the original Office. I'm a big fan of, even if I kind of hate Ricky Gervais now. Um, but there's an aspect of British comedy that I fucking hate, I loathe, I despise. And Bridget Jones is exactly in that. So I was never going to see this movie, but I want to have this rant and I want to get your own thoughts. First off, it's a movie about like that's designed to make like people, women in their 40s and 50s go and be like, oh, that's so my life. I so relate. And it's directed by a man. It's directed by Michael Morris. It's just like, which just tells you, like, again, it is just a man's perception of what a woman's life is. And it's so incredibly sure of itself that it's like, look, guys, or gals, life, am I right? Look at it. It's so true to life. Where they're using already kind of dated references like, oh, I guess you should go back on Tinder. You know what I mean? And it's just like, or are you just over in the corner dabbing and just using things that's like, we don't, nobody says that anymore. And like, you're like, and it's not even trying to stay in touch with the kids, it's trying to appeal to mothers who want to stay in touch with the kids. Like, it's just, it's appealing at nobody. But it's doing it in that way where it's like, you can't say this is funny or you just don't get it. You know what I mean? You don't understand that Tinder is the hot new thing. And it has this like ridiculous notion at the core of it, like where it has like soccer mom wish fulfillment syndrome, where it's like, hunky men in their 20s want to ride you, and they're all just thinking, how hot is she living her life, how hectic is her life, I bet I could tame her. In a way that if a man wrote that tone about a woman fancying them at that age, like, it'd be a 70s movie, or it'd be fucking cancelled and called creepy. But again, because this is empowerment dressed up as like awkward British comedy, we have to be like, oh yeah, that's so relatable and true. It's similar to Love Actually as well, in that I watch these kind of movies and I'm like, every person in this is awful. They are the worst humanity has to offer, but portraying what Hollywood perceives as the average person with grit and contempt for the average person. But really, it's someone that nobody has ever met and only exists in this weird cinema, this weird kind of British cinematic projection of the world that we tell ourselves is real, because it's someone got awkward at one stage and you got was like, and it's like, he tripped over his own words. I did that before. This is me. Awful. I can't stand it. I'm never going to see this, and I hate this brand of comedy. Tom, you're about to tell me that you think Bridget Jones got screwed for the Oscar, are you?
I love Bridget Jones. I can tame her. No, I mean,
I can tame
if only she would choose me. Oh, Bridget. Um, it is weird though, like, because like this, yeah, I actually had someone say this to me. They were like, yeah, actually it is kind of weird. And this was like a woman, like, who was like, yeah, it is kind of weird. She's lusting after all these weird younger men. It's like, yeah, it is weird because like there was kind of like the Bridget Jones character specifically, there was like an attainability to like being that person. Which, by the way, I went back and watched the first Bridget Jones like a couple of weeks ago. I hadn't seen. I think I saw like bits of it when I was a kid, but I was like looking back, and man, fucking hell, has it not aged well? There's like there's moments where they're like, oh, look at fat, awkward Bridget kind of thing, and then you're looking at her like this is a gorgeous movie, Sarah Renee Zellweger looking
Yeah.
totally is it with a totally honestly not even normal like body type, like incredibly good body type, and we're all like, "Oh, look at her there, look dumpy," and I'm like, "No, what is this like?"
In
Um,
that weird 90s laddish way where, like, do you remember like fucking the tabloids? And it's like you'd be like Jennifer Lopez, like, and it's like, look at her arse, it's so horrible. And we're like,
yeah,
what? Like, what? What?
yeah, and
Spotty man in your 50s? What?
and there's all sorts of like weird like elements to it that are kind of like a little like all about like sexual harassment, and we're all meant to go like, "Yeah, you go, girl," and it's like, I don't know, that's kind of weird. I don't know about that. I
You're
guess it's
making me
okay.
kind of want to watch it.
I guess it's okay because it's Hugh Grant, I suppose, or whatever the fuck, like, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I don't know, British comedy, some like, and I actually it's there's a similar element with some Irish comedy, but it's a totally different point to what you're raising. But I hate when any comedy is kind of like annoyingly, gratingly of that country. You know, like
Mm,
there's almost an annoying element of Britishness to Bridget Jones at times.
yeah.
And it kind of bugs me a little bit. I don't know, and it's Love Actually is the worst example for me. I really don't like Love Actually, and I'm tired of pretending to people that are like Love Actually is great. I'm just kind of like,
No, they're the worst. I've done a podcast
I,
about it, how
no,
everyone in Love Actually is a scumbag, and without
yeah,
fail, not one person, and I can fight it. Emily, what?
I would
Like,
agree.
you're gonna say Emma Thompson? No, scumbag, scumbag. All of them scumbags. They're all scumbags. Every one of them. I will fight anyone. If you want it, come at me. I'll fight you over it. But yeah, I totally agree. Love Actually awful.
But yeah, I'd like, and I think like I wish that the Bridget Jones films were kind of. I'm not going to say they weren't. They're not. I wish they were better because I have only seen the first one. I do want to watch the other ones and see how they go. But like, because there is something interesting to having a kind of a comedy character that you check in with every couple of decades, in different
Mm.
stages in her life. But yeah, like I don't really get the hook at this point. Like what is there left to say with a Bridget Jones at this point? Like, oh, guess what? Oh, relationships. And oh, what does like and I hate again this whole idea of like, oh, what as you said, like, oh, regular person doesn't understand the modern conventions of dating. It's like, yeah, like that's like I don't know who that's funny to. Like, is it meant to be funny to like women of Bridget's age that are like, oh, she doesn't understand Tinder?
You're
But
stupid.
but you're
And
yeah,
they're
but also
supposed
like
to go, I am stupid.
yeah, exactly. It's
Like,
like you're
what?
the same age
What's
as
the
Bridget, and if
joke?
like if you're laughing at the joke, you understand Tinder. So the movie is calling you stupid, or vice versa. And again, it's just like it's like bottom level humor at times, and again, I haven't seen the film either. I haven't seen any Bridget Jones beyond the first one, and again, I thought that was alright as much as there were some weird elements to it, but yeah, I don't get like so some levels of humor that I just don't really get it, and I think that's kind of what's putting me off this film a little bit.
Yeah.
Like again, maybe I will see it because it's already on streaming in some countries, so maybe I'll check it at some point. But I'm not like rushing to check out the new Bridget Jones to see how she gets on with. I don't know. At this point, I don't know. Like she had a baby last one. I don't know. She's like moving, grieving, and now she's like, oh, she's got like I don't know. I saw a clip and she was like falling out of a tree and someone caught her, and I was like, what is this? This weird like it's like the next level up from like reading a romance novel of her escapism. Like I don't get it.
It's a different era, and I don't know, maybe that's what people want to harken back to, but
Mm.
like, that's bad. Let's finish on a high note because we were after getting down a bit. Like, first we told ourselves Conclave is going to win Best Oscar, and then we're like, let's talk Captain America and Bridget Jones. I want to talk about the monkey. Um, it is Oz Perkins' follow up to Longlegs, which split opinions with us last. And I'd be interested. Like, I don't think this is going to split opinions with us, but I don't know. But that did very much split opinions with us, and a very different tone to Longlegs, which was kind of what I called at the time True Detective done right. And we're kind of weaving in very old school horror elements. But yeah, there was kind of a lack of seriousness to some parts of it that where you'd expect it. And Nicolas Cage was Nicolas Cage, and that split us. And I think it could split your opinion on this. Monkey Man is completely different. It's based on the 1980 Stephen King story from his book Skeleton Crew. It's set in Maine, USA, in line with all Stephen King traditions. It's based on, if anyone hasn't seen it, we won't do spoilers, obviously, but if you know the monkey toy in Toy Story, that's essentially what we're talking here. And the concept of it is, and Oz Perkins in interviews leading up to the movie spoke about this, how essentially it's a ridiculous concept. And it's the monkey, like someone winds up the monkey and then it ends up banging on its drums, and they changed it from a cymbal to a drum because of confusion around the fact that the monkey was put into Toy Story 3 of all movies. Um, and because of that, there was confusion over whether Disney owned the copyright. So they just changed it a little bit. But when the monkey plays its drum, a person dies in a horrific way. Oz Perkins, I'm not sure if he likes the source material or hates it. And having seen the movie, I'm none the wiser because he clearly thinks it's a ridiculous concept. So what he did was made one of the funniest comedy horror movies I think you'll ever see. It is Final Destination on crack. It is essentially a movie where characters die in ever increasing ridiculous manners, and it could have been in my movie The Monk Conversation, but it's just so insane that I'm like, I'm not sure if this is genius or he just hates this source material and he's making a fuck you movie as a result, but doing so while being an excellent director. So I'm compelled by it. But I had an amazing time at the cinema. It's got names you recognize in it. It's got the likes of Adam Scott in it. And there's some other people I won't spoil who show up at times as well, but people you like here. And it's got one of those kind of, in the same way the Bear will randomly have people that, show up just because, again, they know that it's good and they want to get their face in there. This is very similar in that respect. And there's people that show up for cameos and whatnot. But obviously you have the um, lead character Theo James, who plays twins in this. There's a stage where you have them when they're children, and then it kind of jumps forward in time. Um, the twins are Hal and Bill, and Hal for me is like David from Friends, whereas Bill is like a child villain in a Pixar movie. And it's all like kind of
He's
cackling,
Sid from
screaming.
he's Sid from Toy Story, like.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Or like the Incredibles villain as well. Like, do you know, the Incredibles 2, I think it is. That's who I was thinking of. And it is just a delight. It's an absolute riot. Um, Not for everyone. You have to be dialed into this type of comedy. You have to have kind of a working knowledge of horror to appreciate it. But it was right up my alley. And if it sounds like it's for you, if you liked Final Destination and you want to see that, but leaning fully into comedy, this is the movie for you. Creative deaths, hilarious deaths. Everyone in my screening was pissing themselves laughing. But again, there will be people who just find this too far and stupid. If I watch this with my parents, and they don't hate horror, they like some elements, but if I watch this with my parents, they'd just be like, what the fuck is this? But if you have a bit of a dark, twisted sense of humor and you can laugh at death, and the likes of that, then this is for you. Tom, was this for you though?
Yeah, it's really weird. Like this directed by Osgood Perkins, who directed Long Legs, which was so dry and serious. And this movie
Yeah.
is like the most unserious film I've maybe ever watched or seen in quite a long time. Like even the concept of a monkey that's randomly killing people is like crazy. And it's not that the monkey is actually killing people, it's more that the monkey is affecting something that's never really explained. The movie doesn't really get tripped up too much on the logic of the whole thing, and that's good because that
Yeah.
would totally ruin the idea of it. But yeah, this movie is a blast. It's a lot of fun. Like, it's just totally off the wall bonkers. Like, just again, you're just basically it. Like, Final Destination is what I was going to compare it to as well. It's literally just what's going to happen. Oh, this person's going to probably explode for no real reason. With like the thinnest of premise that something is going to happen and a body parts and blood are going to go splattering everywhere. Um, Theo James, like again, I hadn't really seen him in many things, and when I saw him here, I was like, "Oh man, I actually liked it." And I at first I didn't even like cop that it was like two different actors. I was like, they look alike, but like, is it really him? So it was good. I definitely didn't cop it with the kids. I was like, holy shit. Um,
Yeah.
but performance wise, it was great. I liked Tatiana Maslany. Was really good as like the mother character. And I actually thought there was a real kind of interesting kind of visual flourishes to this that were really
Mm.
cool. That again showed that it wasn't just literally let's just blow up bodies and goo and fire blood everywhere. There was some thought put into this that made it really fun. There was a cool kind of atmosphere to the whole thing that is always there in Stephen King's work, but like with a premise like this, it's hard to make work. And I thought the movie had a good kind of like tone. There was a kind of an element. There was like a little bit of campness, but also kind of a like over the top kind of horror, but kind of never too serious. It was like a real campy horror, but kind of fun film to watch. Like, and I was kind of trying to think of why Osgood Perkins would make it, to be honest, given his other work. And then I kind of remember reading and kind of well, not remember reading, but I remember that like Osgood Perkins, like his father was Anthony Perkins, who was Norman
Yeah.
Bates in Psycho, who died of AIDS, complications from AIDS, at a young age, or when he was quite young. And again, it's like that was a very, very public death. His mother was also famous and died 9/11. So he's just someone who basically lost, his parents in two kind of horrible, horrible, horrific ways to go very publicly, and then kind of had to go through it. And there is that element to the story here, through the kind of story of the children. And again, it's kind of just a bit of a romp. Like
Mm.
it's as much as like, but there might be serious themes in it. Like there's even like as you kind of go in towards like the end of the film, you're like, oh, is this going to be a serious standoff? It's like, no, it's still always so silly. Our villain is kind of mustache twirlingly evil. There's like incompetent kind of people all around. It's just really, really fun. And then like even towards the end when you think it's all over, there's still just the most ridiculously insane stuff. I mean, Stephen King himself said this movie is batshit. And like
Yeah.
that's going from Stephen King, who wrote some incredibly batshit stuff. So that's all you need to know. Again, is it for everyone? Probably not, but I do think it's one that the right person is going to have an absolute blast with because it's just really fun. Would I ever probably watch it again? I don't know if it would still have like the same effect having watched it the first time, but it's a really fun time in cinema. Definitely want to see with an audience, I think.
I'd watch it. Do you know what? I'd watch it again in showing someone because I'd love to see someone
Yeah,
else's
yeah,
response. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know if I watch it by myself. But it was so much fun. Do you know it is for a certain type of person? As you were speaking there and telling that story about his parents, because again, I read a lot of interviews around this, trying to understand why he made this and if he actually hated this idea and just made a fuck you movie. Um, but no, the way Osgood Perkins looks at it, and he speaks about a lot of his grief and trauma in the interviews, and he's like, when you deal with what I've dealt with, you kind of have to have a, if you don't laugh, you'll cry approach to death.
yeah.
And like, if you're the type of person who, like, if you've lost someone and someone, like, say you've lost your mom or something like that, and someone sags your ma, and you're like, yeah, my man's dead, because you find that funny, that's the person that it's for. Or if you appreciate that kind of dark humor around death, that is what this is. It's like, yeah, death is sad, but it's also sometimes funny. Like, and here's a compilation of the funniest deaths in a you've been framed style way. Like, and it is. So it's interesting. I enjoyed it. Really good. Like, I know we got a bit depressed halfway through there, but like, it was a really strong February at the movies.
It just
So I
took us
enjoyed it.
talk about death and gooey, blowy uppy bodiness and made us lighten our mood somehow.
Yeah, it really did. But we're looking ahead to March, obviously coming up. What movies are you looking forward to next month?
There's a few. Mickey 17 is probably the highlight
Finally.
among them. You know, I feels like we've been waiting forever for this movie. I feel like it's been on my most anticipated for a couple of years now at this point. But yeah, like it just looks like a lot of fun. I think Robert Pattinson has been doing so much good work the last few years that it's hard for him to step a foot wrong. And it's Bong Joon-ho who again like just doesn't miss. And it looks like kind of like sci-fi and kind of a black comedy and all those elements I'm into. The only other two then there's like Death of a Unicorn, which hopefully is going to come out here at the same time it comes out in America, which is like again a black comedy about like starring Paul Rudd, Jenna Ortega, and many more, where they accidentally kill a unicorn. And this was one of those ones where I watched the trailer and halfway through the trailer I was like, no, don't want to see anymore. I'm just no, I'm going to watch this and I probably will like it. And then also to talk about Jack Quaid, there's Novocaine, which it seems like we're getting a lot of these. Like we also had Love Hurts this month. We're getting a lot. We always get a lot of these like weird person doing an action movie that you might not expect. But this one has the
Mm.
premise that he can't feel pain, and I'm like, that sounds kind of interesting. Okay, let's go. But yeah, those are my highlights. I think coming up for March.
Mickey 17 is on the list for me as well. I want to call out, and I can't with any certainty say this would be good, but I'm going to be interested by it because I find all of these projects interesting. Queen of the Ring.
Yeah.
Like, first off, obviously, look, wrestling fan, run low blows. Um, so obviously it's going to appeal to me. It's the story of kind of the birth of female wrestling in America. Mae Young is a character in this for reference as well. If anyone, even non-wrestling fans, remember, she's someone that people would know from back in the day. Um, it's got like real wrestlers in it. It's got the likes of Tony Storm, Jim Cornette's in it, Camille is in it as well. But also it's got like Walton Goggins, who one of my favorite actors, and we're getting Walton Goggins overload right now between Invincible, The White Lotus, and now this. So anything he puts his name to, I'm always a little bit interested at the very least. So wrestling movies also make for interesting dialogue and good talk. So I might do a podcast around it as well, depending on how good it is. So we'll see. That's out on March 7th. I'm not sure about how wide the release is over here. I suppose we'll
Mhm.
find out very, very shortly. Tom, what's going over on the Pop Cup Pod? Anything interesting coming up?
Do you know what? I've actually been really quiet lately, Pop Go Pod. I'm kind of figuring out what I want the kind of future to be, where I'm kind of steering things. I'm kind of working a lot of stuff behind the scenes. To be honest, there's going to be
Nice.
maybe a couple of new shows. I wish I could say something specific, but I keep to anytime I mention something specific, it doesn't happen. So I'm going to shut my mouth and just say, just say, I promise good stuff is coming. So stick around, subscribe to the Pop Go Pod. There's plenty of stuff you can watch there at the moment, anyway. But yeah, the stuff to come as well.
He's not mentioning it, and like you can subscribe. Look, there's an amazing back catalog there as well. You can check out from over the years too. But like now that he doesn't plug something, it's gonna be like Tom's writing a Marvel movie. What? Like, why did he not tell us that? Like,
It's me. I'm
Marvel's
the new
here.
James Bond. Shh.
Guys, I don't know what's coming up on page 180. I'm really into the substance, or not the substance, sorry. I'm really into Invincible and Severance as well. So I'd be keen to get a spoilery show talking about them over the next few weeks. We'll see how we get on there. And obviously, we've got like The Last of Us and Andor coming out in April as well. So there's going to be loads coming up. And then WrestleMania season. So I'll probably have a few low blow shorts. I've got some interesting irons in the fire there, stuff I think people will like. So keep an eye on the feed and you'll get it as it is released. But Tom, always a pleasure. Follow Tom at Pop Cult Pod. We're going to link to it in the show notes, but also on all socials as well. Always worth a follow. Always a pleasure to chat movies with you, chat about March with you this time next month. Until next time, though, this has been February at the Movies. I've been Ger Leggett, and Tom, everybody dies. Some of us peacefully and in our sleep, and some of us horribly. And that's life.